Well, a very, very happy Friday morning to everyone, and welcome to the John Kentera Show. We're on 3 platforms, YouTube, Facebook, and X, and hope everyone's had a great week. And we're finishing off our first week of 3 shows. Of course, we're going Monday, Wednesday, and Friday at 9 o'clock, trying to give you the best possible sports talk we possibly can. And, of course, we normally focus primarily on our San Diego Padres, and we'll talk baseball. We got some college basketball for you today. Coming up shortly, we're going to talk with longtime national baseball writer Scott Miller. I got a book coming out as well. We'll tell you about that. But I want to get to a lot of your questions today on the program. Of course, we also go back and do Coach's Mailbag. We get your comments from previous shows, and you can write them in on whether it be on YouTube, Facebook, X. You write them, we'll try to answer them for you. And again, we'd ask you if you're maybe even tuning in for the first time, would you please like our program? But more than that, please subscribe. We're trying to build our listening audience. And, from what I understand, talking to the people that monitor my podcast, the amount of people that are joining us live and going back and watching the podcast continues to grow. And we just want to get you good information. More than anything else, we want to get you great information out there. So again, if you would subscribe, doesn't cost any money. We're not one of these sites that's going to charge you money. And again, like and please pass it on to other sports fans in San Diego and Southern California for that matter. But man, we got a ton to talk about on baseball. We got some great college basketball news. Padres sitting at 7-0. They're getting ready to head into the Windy City to take on the Chicago Cubs. That'll start later today. And so it's Friday, Saturday, Sunday in Chicago. All games, by the way, are going to be at 11:20. Then the Padres will fly into the Bay Area and take on the A's, not the Sacramento A's, but the A's at a minor league ballpark, and they will play Monday and Tuesday night at 7:10, and then they got a 12:35 game on Wednesday. They'll be off next Thursday, and then they'll be home on Friday night to open up a 3-game series against Buddy Black and the Colorado Rockies. Padres sitting at 7-0, Dodgers at 8-0. I mean, it's crazy. Dodgers going to be in Philadelphia over the weekend. You got the news on Freddie Freeman. He fell in the shower at home and tweaked that ankle that was recovering from surgery during the offseason. So the Dodgers yesterday put him on the IL, but the Dodgers are just on fire, absolutely on fire. We're going to get into Dylan Cease's great effort the other day. We're going to talk more about Jackson Merrill's contract. We're going to get you all the greatest news we possibly can between now and about 10 o'clock. But right now, we're going to head out to our hotline. A guy that's always got a smile on his face, always working, always has his finger on the pulse of Major League Baseball, and that's our great buddy, longtime national baseball writer and author Scott Miller joins me on the John Kentera Show. And Scotty, good morning. How are you?
Great, Coach. How are you today on this Friday?
I'm doing very, very well. And I got to, before we get into everything, keep us updated on the book. I know it's coming out quickly. I've already talked to some people that have ordered it, pre-ordered it. It really sounds like every manager in baseball, every former manager in baseball is going to be buying your book.
Well, that'd be a good thing if that happens, Coach. But yeah, called Skipper, Why Baseball Managers Matter and Why They Always Will. And it's released on May 13th, so we're getting close. It's on pre-order right now, Amazon, Target, Barnes & Noble. If you pre-order it, it gets delivered to your house on release day, May 13th. But yeah, it's nice for you to bring it up again. And it's funny, I was just doing some reading right before coming on, and I was reading the Chicago Tribune, and I was reading Paul Sullivan, longtime columnist there. And before that, he covered the White Sox and the Cubs. I've known him for years. He had a column on Craig Counsell. They're all excited about the Cubs opening day today against the Padres. So I'm reading along on Paul Sullivan's column about Craig Counsell, and doggone if in the last 3 paragraphs, he says something Counsell needs to do. And then he says, as Counsell told Scott Miller in the upcoming book, Skipper. So the publicists at the at Hatche, the publisher in New York of the book, they've sent some advanced copies out, and it looks like people are reading them, because I was very tickled to see, Paul Sullivan in today's column on the Cubs opener. mentions the book, the upcoming book. So excited about it, and hopefully baseball fans love it.
Scotty, a number of years ago, a guy you knew, Dave Garcia, a
Oh,
longtime
great.
baseball
Yep.
man, and
Yep.
and Dave was such a marvelous human being. I mean, everybody knows him as a baseball guy, but
Yep.
just as a human being, there was nobody better. And
No.
I spent countless hours with him talking about, managing, working with ball players. I remember one time I was thinking about getting out of radio and getting back into coaching and managing. And I went over to his house, and I still got that folder of all the notes I took. And I spent an afternoon with him talking about how do you select your pitching coach? How do you deal with this situation? I mean, it was priceless. And I know all the managers that you talk to. You talk to present day managers, you talk to former managers, guys that had great success, some managers that didn't have great success.
Yeah.
And that's why I am so excited about this book, because everybody does it a little bit different. I was
Yeah.
looking at a quote the other day from Clint Hurdle. He goes, everybody talks about developing ball players. He goes, what I try to do, I try to develop people, and the ball playing will normally take care of itself with a guy's natural ability. But you got to get these guys to let them know that you care about them more than just being a ball player. And Clint Hurdle, I think, really, he had a really, really nice managerial career, and
He did.
he went through a lot in his life, battling alcoholism. But I
Mhm.
mean, he's a guy, whenever he talks, I listen.
No doubt. He's one of the great leaders. And yeah, I've loved Clint Hurdle. There's a little bit of him in the book. I didn't interview him, but I've got some stuff just because I've covered the game 35 or 40 years. And um, I sprinkle in some Clint Hurdle stuff he told me. I didn't interview him specifically for the book, but some things that he and I talked about in the past resonated with me and stayed with me. And I sprinkled a couple Clint Hurdle anecdotes in the book as well. And you're right. I mean, it's uh, it's a leadership book. Managing is a leadership position. But I mean beyond baseball. I mean, there's a lot. Whatever you're a leader of, if you're the leader of a baseball team, you're the leader of a Fortune 500 company, you're the leader of managing it in and out. It's all about managing people, getting along with people, getting the best out of people, whatever the job is. And that's where it's so fascinating. It's a human uh, condition, and getting the best out of people. And as you hear baseball managers say all the time, putting people in the best position to succeed that they can. And there's an art to it, and it's not an exact science. Some people do it a lot better than others. And it's fascinating. And hopefully the book comes at the right time, because as you know, we're in an era with analytics where managers have kind of been devalued. A lot of people think, the front office, the baseball analytics people really run things. And the manager's just kind of a figurehead in the dugout now. And the job has changed. There's no question about it. I mean, the job that Mike Schilt is doing right now is different, way different from the job that was required in 1970 when Preston Gomez was running the Padres, or later when Earl Weaver was running the Orioles. What Earl Weaver did, that job is totally different than what Brandon Hyde is doing in Baltimore right now. Yet that's not, people shouldn't mistake it that, well, the front office is running things, and what Brandon Hyde or anybody else in today's manager's chair should not mistake it that, well, they're just a figurehead. Because as Dave Roberts showed, look at the past few World Series winners. I mean, Dave Roberts, one of his things is he wants to touch every one of his players every day, as he calls it. Touch, not physically, but check in with, whether it's a 2-minute conversation or just a, hey, how you doing? What's going on today, while they're getting lunch in the clubhouse. He likes to go around and make sure he makes physical, hello, verbal communication with every one of the 26 players. And you look at the World Series winners. I mean, the Dodgers, Bruce Bochy recently won his 4th World Series with the Rangers. I mean, not with the Rangers. He won 3 with San Francisco, and then won his 4th as he managed Texas. The year before that, Dusty Baker finally won. I mean, the past handful of World Series winners are kind of those old school managers that get the most out of their teams, and by that get the most, communicate the best and have figured things out about their players.
Okay, I want to talk about the National League West, and I
Yes.
want to, we'll start with the Dodgers because they're 8-0. They're going to be in
Yes.
Philadelphia this weekend, and that's going to be, I think, a fantastic series.
Yes.
But the other night was amazing. They're down 5-2. Muncy makes a couple of errors, cost Blake Snell 5 unearned runs, and he eventually comes up and gets a big hit and drives in some runs. But then on Otani's bobblehead night, he
Yeah.
hits a home run in the bottom of the ninth. I mean, everything is going right for the Dodgers, and that's considering Freddie Freeman's missed some games and bets. They weren't sure about him starting the year because of the illness. He missed the 2 games in Japan, but the Dodgers right now, they're playing at a different level, but so are the San Diego Padres. I mean, this is amazing. Padres off to a 7-0 start, and I got to tell you, Scotty, I've watched Padre baseball since 1969. I have never seen a Padre team over a 7-game stretch play flawless baseball like they're playing right now.
It's a lot of fun to watch. And yeah, a couple things. One, I was the last Dodger game, the walk-off with Otani was that Wednesday night, I guess.
Yeah.
Um, and I'm home and it's over the dinner hour. Kim and I are in the kitchen, we're getting some whatever we were having for dinner together. It was delicious. But anyway, I had the Dodger Braves game on TV. And as you said, the Braves are up 5-2, and it was like the fifth inning. And I said, you know what? These are the Dodgers. This is a long way to go yet. This is not a win for the Braves, even though they're up 5-2 in the fifth or sixth inning. And sure enough, the Dodgers came back and beat them. You're right. Otani never ceases to amaze. But with them being 8-0 and the Padres 7-0, I mean, that's as good a story as there is in baseball right now. I mean, I know we're talking a lot about the torpedo bats, and Aaron Judge is off to a great start. There's a number of really good, interesting stories around the game right now, but what's going on in the National League West is as good as any of them. And I think it's got national attention. And to your point on the Padres playing flawless baseball, it's been great to watch. I mean, from the play they had worked out on the base paths the other day where Fernando Tatis steals home, the Manny Machado double play when he fielded the ball, took the throw at third base after the step off, and they nailed Gabriel Arraez, and then he kind of hugged Machado. Machado's head's up enough to throw with the ball in his glove to like ghost throw to second to show the umpire, hey, this is interference, and he got the call. To the contact hitting, I talked to Mike Schilt before the game the other day. He and I were talking for a while on the field during batting practice, and I told him, I said, you guys are really fun to watch right now, especially offensively. I love the philosophy of hitting from all fields and the contact. Imagine that, a team that doesn't strike out every third batter. I said, it's such an old thing. I grinned to Schilt. I said, imagine that if you put the ball in play, something good could happen. And he grinned back. He said, yeah, imagine that, the way it used to be. I said, well, it's been something to watch so far.
Well, I think a couple of things here, and we need to talk a little more about Mike Schilt. Okay, Mike Schilt's not the greatest guy in the world in a press conference. Okay, he's very
Right.
dry, and a lot of
Yep.
times, you'll ask a question, he'll kind of agree with you and move on to the next question, and a lot of times he'll
Right.
thank you for asking that question,
Yeah.
but he's not going to give you anything. Okay, he's going to give you the party line. He's going to give you the standard ball club line. But I'm going to tell you what, I think the way he has been able to impart his philosophy and the players buying in, I think it goes back to his days growing up as a young kid, spending time around the clubhouse, coming up through the Cardinal organization, George Kissel, who I've got a great affection for. Anybody that's been around George Kissel, I always pick their brain about the fundamentals of the game. And I think that's really what the Padres were missing for a long time here. Everything was kind of laissez-faire under a couple of young managers. And, Bob Melvin, I think, got those guys to buy in that first year. And then the second year, everything kind of went awry because of him and AJ. But I think a lot of this goes back to Mike Shildt being brought up through the Cardinal organization, it has always been considered one of the best fundamentally sound organizations in baseball.
No doubt. And I agree. I've talked with Mike at length about George Kissel and his communication and his interactions with Kissel while Shildt was a minor league manager, and how much love, admiration, and respect he had for George Kissel. In fact, Kissel, I think at one point there was some kind of almost like a Kissel's notes were turned into kind of like a paperback, paperback book in the
Right,
Cardinal organization. It wasn't
right.
for sale, but anyway, Shildt still has that today, carries it with him. And no doubt the Cardinals, and I think, it's one thing, Cardinals have been down the last couple of years. I think they've kind of gotten away from the Cardinal way. Over all these decades, it's been the Cardinal way, but, they've moved into full steam ahead into analytics and doing things differently with their hitting coaches. And they haven't quite been as successful. I think they've gotten a little bit away from it. Whereas here, it's ingrained. It is in Mike Shilt's blood that, if you want to call it the Cardinal way, but whatever you want to call it under that umbrella is, like you say, strong fundamentals, do all the little things right in the game, heads up base running, contact hitting, situational hitting. And I think in Shilt's second year now, that's just becoming more and more ingrained in the organization. And you certainly have seen it this first week at the major league level.
How big was it the other day that the Padres announced Jackson Merrill to a 9-year contract, 135 million? They got a club option that could actually turn into a player option if he has
Yep. 500
plate appearances in the prior 9 years. And not only that, he could actually, become a free agent if he wants, if he finishes in the top 5 in MVP voting in that option year. So, I mean, but really, the kid wants to be here. The Padres want to have him. He wants guaranteed money. Padres got him at a discount, but the bottom line, this guy wants to be here, and that means a lot.
Oh, it does. And, I loved his quote from the press conference the other day, in which he said, he acknowledged that, yeah, maybe I could have held out for more money or gotten more money, but, he mentioned a $700 million contract, which it's hard not to see that as, I know he wasn't taking a shot at Juan Soto because that's not Jackson Merrill, but it was hard not to read into that as here's an egomaniac like Soto, and here's a baseball player who's humble and growing, Jackson Merrill, and they're on two sides of the street. And I loved not just the quote about 700 million and that you don't necessarily need that, but he tied that in with, I'd rather be in a place with real people, he said, where they ask you about your personal life, and it's, real people in a real club. And again, I couldn't help but think, Juan Soto, been here, done that with him in San Diego. It didn't go as well as people hoped it would. He left the Yankees, signed with the Mets, $700 million. And on top of that, he gets the Mets to throw in a suite for his family. He gets the Mets to throw in bodyguards or, muscle to take care, to guard his family. And eventually it's like, oh my God, you're getting $700 million. You can't just like pay for a little bit of that yourself. So in other words, it becomes about more than just baseball. It's about the superstar. It's about my own brand. I'm Juan Soto, and I don't mean to sit here and knock him. We'll get back to Jackson Merrill.
He's an easy guy to knock, though.
He is. He's a diva. There's no doubt. And yeah, he is. I'm not a big Soto fan. I think it's more about Juan Soto than it is about the team. And with Jackson Merrill, it's more about the team than it is Jackson Merrill, bottom line. And so, yeah, I think the contract is important on a couple of things. One, Jackson Merrill's a guy you're going to bet on. You're going to bet on his makeup, his skills as a teammate. What was it when the Padres were in Arizona? Was that it was late last year or spring training? I think it was late last year, but they're playing in Arizona, and he drove out 2 or 3 days in a row out to their spring training camp or to their headquarters, Peoria, during the day before the night game, because he wanted to see some of the minor leaguers play and he wanted to get to know them a little bit. I mean, this is an organization guy that cares more about just Jackson Merrill. So that's hugely important, let alone, obviously, the main thing is his skills and what he can do on the field. But then you throw in this other stuff. And I've been more impressed with Jackson Merrill than any other young talent I've seen come along in a long time. I mean, and I thought this last year before he signed this deal. I mean, you watched his interviews, and it is for him. It's about winning. It's about, helping his teammates and wanting them to look good as well as himself look good. And the other thing, last thing that I think is important in this deal, Coach, is it also sends a public signal in the midst of this Seidler family squabble that's going to court so far, at least, and where Shiel Seidler is, filed suit against a couple of Peter's brothers. And there's a lot of uncertainty here in town about, well, what's going to happen. There were rumors like, well, if it gets really ugly, they may have to sell the team. The Seidlers have denied that. They said we're here for the long term. But anyway, there's been rumors that with Peter gone, they're going to have to reel in the payroll. And I think to an extent they are, and that's kind of a different subject. And they will eventually have to reel in some. But the Jackson Merrill contract signals publicly, hey, we're still operating to win, and we can operate in a way where we can still give deals to our talented young players. And I think publicly that's a big symbol.
Well, Jackson Merrill's got tremendous mental makeup, and
Yeah.
kind of another point. You talked about how he drove out and watched the minor league guys. A lot of those guys he was coming up through the organization with, and they're his buddies. But a thing that also was impressive, I thought, was this spring training. And I know the Padres, they only had two games actually supposed to be on TV, but thanks to Jesse Agler and Tony Gwynn Jr. and Bob Scanlon, they put some of those webcasts on, so we got to see some Padre baseball. Okay. But Jackson Merrill, when he would get taken out after the fourth or fifth inning, he'd stay in the dugout the entire 9 innings. He didn't grab his bag, walk down the right field line, sign a few autographs, and go in, shower, and get off the complex before the game was over. He stayed there the entire game. You know what? I hope he does that till he's 35 years of age. I mean, that sets a great tone for the organization. And I'm not trying to dog the veterans that do, go in early. They may need to get treatment and all that, and that's great. But I just thought it set a really nice precedent that a star young player wanted to still be in the dugout cheering for guys that he came up through the minor leagues with that were getting an opportunity to play in a spring training game.
And yes, and that brings up a couple thoughts on my end. One, the other day in the Union Tribune, my old friend Tom Krasovic wrote a nice column after the signing, kind of comparing, not wholly, but comparing a little bit Jackson Merrill to Derek Jeter in his attitude, and just wanting to win, and that being the most important thing. And what you just said about Jackson Merrill staying in the dugout during a spring training game reminds me a little bit of something Jeter did, and it ties in with back to, you mentioned Clint Hurdle earlier in the show. And I think I included this anecdote in the book. One of the things Hurdle told me years ago, I was doing a story several years ago as analytics was getting going on some hitters. Is there like a paralysis by analysis, because some hitters are they dove into analytics so much, or they were being bombarded with analytics instead of just going up and hitting, or they're overthinking things. And that was the gist of the overall story. So I was talking to Clint Hurdle, and he was still managing in Pittsburgh at the time. And, part of the paralysis by analysis is, and you still see it today, sometimes these hitters come back from at bat and they go right into the dugout, and you see them grab the iPad, and they, instead of what's going on in the field, they're watching their at bat that they just finished, like what happened or where was that pitch. Anyway, before iPads were in the dugout, the Pirates had right behind their dugout at home, like you go down the tunnel and right back there, they had like several laptops set up. And Hurdle saw too many of his hitters coming off the field and going right to the laptop to watch what just happened. And he ended up having the laptops removed from behind the dugout, sent them back to the clubhouse. so the hitters couldn't do that all the time. And one reason he did that, he told me, is he told his hitters, look at the Yankees, watch the Yankees. Derek Jeter was still playing. He said, Derek Jeter is always on the top step of that dugout,
Yep.
locked into what's going on in the game. He might have just struck out. He'll come back. He'll still be on the top step, locked in. He's picking things up on the field. He's rooting on his teammates. He's maybe sharing a tip he sees with a teammate. That's back to Jackson Merrill staying in the dugout during spring training. It reminds me a little bit or a lot of that.
See, I think, and I want to get on and talk about some of the other teams in the National League West, but I think during the games, there should be no electronics whatsoever except for the manager on a replay.
There's too much. Again, it's just we're leaning too much on tech today, and it's a human game, and you need your reflexes, and you need to, it's like the more you rely on the iPads and the computers, the less you think about things. I mean, you think about, well, my mechanics while I'm watching on the iPad, but we have a generation of players that are trying to do everything technically that they can, but there's a lot of instinctual baseball play that's being lost because it's more robotic. They're, instead of reacting and having a higher baseball IQ like the Manny Ramirez play the other day. And not everybody can be Manny Ramirez. I mean, his IQ on the baseball field is like genius level. But instead of just learning as you grow and being a great base runner or being whatever, being able to make adjustments, it's like you're capable of making adjustments until you see something on video. And it, in some areas, the game's lesser for that.
I think you meant Machado, right? Not Ramirez.
Oh, did I say Ramirez? Oh, my.
Yeah.
Yes, I meant Machado. Yes. Yeah, the play the other day. Yeah, Manny, his baseball IQ, he was a hitting savant. He was a genius in the batter's box, Manny Ramirez. But no, we don't want to get too high with his baseball IQ. Thank you for that correction.
Hey, well, Manny Machado, thank you as well for pointing that out.
I talked to Machado the other day. By the way, the other day, I talked about that play when I was out there the other day on the field. I told him, it reminded me, my introduction to Machado, you probably remember this, when Baltimore called him up as a 19-year-old. He was new to the majors. I was somewhere on the road. It was the last few weeks of September, maybe the last 10 days of the season. Baltimore was playing Oakland on television. I was in a clubhouse. I want to say the Tigers in Chicago, where the White Sox play. And we're keeping an eye on the Baltimore-Oakland game. Baltimore needed a win. Somebody hit a squibber down the third base line. Machado charged. He's like 19. He's just up. He fakes there's a guy on second, Oakland A on second. He fakes the throw to first, wheels around, whips to third. They get the lead runner at third base. And I was like, that's one of the first times I'd seen Machado play, and it's on TV. I'm like, oh my God. Again, with a baseball IQ, he was 19. He's just new to the majors. I mentioned that to him the other day. I said, that play you made, it reminded me of that. I said, you remember that play? He said, oh, yeah, I do. He said, and I love Manny Machado he gave credit. He said, that play was made by J.J. Hardy, the shortstop, because he was covering third base. When I turned to throw to third, he was there. And I said, well, you were new to the majors. First for you even to think of that, but had you and Hardy talked about it? Like, did he know to anticipate? And he said, no. He said, J.J. Hardy was always in the right place at the right time. He said, I learned so much from J.J. Hardy in that aspect when I first came to Baltimore. And I said, well, the play you made the other day, the interference play against Cleveland, it took me right back to that. Manny Machado was like, man, they said that was like 15 years ago. I said, steel trap up here, buddy.
He had a smile on his face on that one.
He did. He loved it.
Okay, let's talk about Bob Melvin and the 5-1 San Francisco Giants. They go in the first series, take 2 out of 3 in Cincinnati. They go down to Houston and sweep the Astros. They've got their home opener tonight against Seattle, but 5-1. Are the Giants a real competitor, you think, for a wild card?
I think they can be. Yeah, I mean, it's certainly a great start. I I mean, one thing that's going to help them is they have young Hu Lee back in center field. The outfielder they signed from Korea, a couple years ago. Remember, he was out pretty much all last year with an injury. That's going to help them this year. Willie Adames, I'm a big fan. I think his not just his play on the field, but his spirit in the clubhouse. He was a free agent they signed from Milwaukee, and Adames really was great for Milwaukee, and former Tampa Bay guy. I think he's a big sign. I don't know how Justin Verlander. I think he and Max Scherzer I kind of lump together. They're the great Hall of Fame pitchers. They're probably staying a little too much past their prime. I mean, Scherzer's already hurt again in Toronto. Seems like he's always getting hurt. I hate to say that because he's one of my favorite guys to watch pitch. We'll see what Verlander brings, but Logan Webb. I think the Giants can hang around. I don't think they're as good as the Dodgers or Padres, but I think they can hang around the wild card race. And I think in Bob Melvin's second year, he knows them better. They know him better. I think they've gotten away from the Farhan Zaidi, Gabe Kapler regime was just, granted they did win 107 games the one year, but, Zaidi just was a fish out of water. He was not a good executive. He didn't have he wasn't able to put a roster together. And I think it'll be interesting. A total new tone has been set under President of Baseball Operations, Buster Posey. And, I think the new tone, the esprit de corps, Melvin's second year, a couple guys healthy, a couple new signings. I think the Giants are going to be okay.
Okay, you got the Diamondbacks. I figured the Diamondbacks were going to be there at the end of the year. They're off to a little bit of a slow start. They're 4-3. They're going to be coming home. They got beat up last night by the Yankees 9-7, and they were really getting hammered. But they tried to make comeback late. Your thoughts early on the Diamondbacks?
Yeah, I agree. They're going to be really good. They did take losing Jordan Montgomery. Hurt, even though he didn't have a good year last year. I kind of had him as more of a comeback guy this year from last year, but now he's going to be out. But Zach Gallen, Merrill Kelly, Brendan Pfaff. Even Eduardo Rodriguez. These guys, there's a good rotation there. Bullpen's pretty good. Corbin Carroll was horrible the first half of last season, and then the second half of last season, he played more like the top 10 MVP finisher he was 2 years ago. Carroll is going to help lead them, I think. See how Josh Naylor fits. They acquired him from Cleveland over the winter. Losing Chris. Conversely, they lost Christian Walker. He was a big part of that team, but I think Naylor will fit in pretty well. But yeah, overall, I think. I know I just said some good things about San Francisco, but I think probably Arizona is the Padres' biggest. If you say the Dodgers win the division, and maybe I shouldn't with the Padres going 7-0 to start, but with their depth over 162, I've got the Dodgers to win the division. I think Arizona is the Padres' biggest challenger for second, and San Francisco is pretty solid, but not quite to that level.
And of course, they also added Corbin Burns during the offseason. So
Yes,
if everybody pitches up to their capabilities, they're sitting pretty good in the starting rotation. Let's just talk briefly about our buddy Black in Colorado. They're 1-5 right now. They got a couple of very nice young players, but what's the long game for the Colorado Rockies with their owner Dick Monfort? Are they ever going to be competitive again?
For Buddy's sake, I'd like to say yes, but not in the near future, and probably not before Buddy retires from managing and somebody else is there. They draw well in Colorado, and I think that in Seattle. Seattle's in a better place than Colorado is, but those two cities, I think it's almost the fans love those teams, and they keep showing up at the ballpark, and as such, it doesn't put any pressure on the owners really to step up and go for it because they're making money because the fans are going to show up anyway. I think it's that way in Seattle because they're so close to winning with that great pitching they have right now. But ownership just last year and this year, they don't step up to improve the offense. And in Colorado, that's even worse than Seattle because, like I said, they haven't been sniffed the playoffs in years. And, look they had a guy that should have been a career, finished his career in Colorado, Troy Tulowitzki. And not only did he not, but that ended with hard feelings, and they traded him. And Tulowitzki was hurt and angry, and there was a war of words between the Rockies and Tulowitzki. Then Nolan Arenado, same thing. Now he's in St. Louis, but he was a guy that could have and should have been a Rocky for life. And the common denominator, as you mentioned, among these mishaps, or whether it's sign a young player to a long-term contract and then there's a falling out, or that not having good young players in the farm system, or not making the right decisions to the major league level. The common denominator over all these years is the owner, Dick Montfort. And, so no, that's why I'd say I don't have confidence that they're going to get going under him. I wish I did, because as you and I both know, Bud Black is such a good man and a better manager maybe than people realize. And he deserves a chance to compete. And I really wish he had that in Colorado.
Well, I'll tell you what, going to Coors Field, you mentioned that they draw well there. That is a fun ballpark to go
It
to.
is.
It's an easy ballpark to get around. It's very spacious, not only in the outfield, but for fans walking around. It's one of my favorite ballparks, to be honest with you.
Yeah, no, it is. It's great. Right down there, I guess what they call Lodo area,
Yeah.
lower downtown. And it's right there, and it is a nice ballpark. And they have a lot of good things going. And I still remember 2007, went back to Clint Hurdle. He seems to keep coming up in this conversation today. When he was managing the Rockies, they went on that crazy, they won 21 of 22 to stretch run. And 07, that was the year they beat the Padres in game 163, right? And then they made the run to the World Series. In fact, I was in Denver for game 163 that year, and I was in there for the playoffs and the World Series. And that place, that atmosphere was as electric as any you'll see.
Scotty, as always, thank you so much for the time. Enjoy all the great baseball, some great matchups this weekend, and look forward to having you on again real soon.
Yeah, likewise. Hopefully the weather holds out in Chicago later today. I know it's supposed to be, it's like mid 40s there with a chance of rain. So Padres going to have to bundle up, but we'll see where it goes. But have a great weekend yourself. Plus, we got Final Four games. Great weekend.
Absolutely. Take care, Scotty. Thanks for the time.
All right, see you, Coach.
There's National Baseball writer Scott Miller and author. His new book coming out, Skipper. That's going to be an awful good one. Okay, I want to recap a little bit. We're going to get to your questions here. So if you're out there, start typing in those questions for them. We're going to get to that in a few minutes. Padres on Wednesday took down Cleveland 5-2, 3-game sweep. Really, there are a lot to unpack in that ball game, and there's some things, just like I said with Scotty. I've been watching Padre baseball since 1969. I've seen all the great Padre teams, the teams that have got to the World Series, but over a 7-game stretch. The Padres have had 7-game winning streaks, but not ever to start the year. We know their longest streak ever was 4-0, and that was back in 1984. And now they've almost doubled that. But they're just playing great old school baseball, running the bases, going first to third, stealing bases. They're doing a marvelous job on the base paths, playing great defense, coming up with hits. I mean, it's just a lot of fun. And you fans, man, are just pouring into the ballpark. Amazing. But, the other day, Dylan Cease coming off a so-so start. I mean, he wasn't able to get out of the 5th inning in his first start. But the other day, I mean, he was flat out dealing. 6 1/3, 4 hits, a run, a walk, 7 strikeouts. It was really kind of cruising. Maybe got a little tired there in the 7th inning. 92 pitches, 58 strikes. But I thought he pretty much had everything working. Like the night before, I mentioned, Michael King in his outing against Cleveland, he didn't necessarily have his sweeper working or his change, but he was on point with his four-seam fastball and his two-seam fastball. Dylan Cease, I thought, had pretty much everything working. He was working ahead in the count. Then they turned it over the bullpen. Wandy Peralta still doesn't have an ERA. Of course, he's 2-0 on the year. Cease picked up his first win of the year the other day. He's 1-0, but Peralta, 2/3 of an inning, a hit, a strikeout. Adrian Morahone, his ERA early on, 1.93, one inning, gave up 3 hits and a run. And then Robert Suarez came in, picked up his third save, hasn't given up anything so far, 1 inning and a strikeout. Pitching staff, you couldn't ask for uh, a better start for the pitching staff. Not only the starters, but the relief corps has been beyond belief to this point. It's a long year, and guys are going to have tight shoulders and sore elbows. But right now, man, everybody's staying healthy and looking great. Okay, I just wanted to mention a little bit more about Jackson Merrill's contract. The deal is the 9-year deal for $135 million, but then there's a bunch of other clauses in there. That club option for the 10th year would, with everything engrossed, would be $30 million for that year. It could take him up to $204 million. And again, if he finishes in the top 5 of MVP voting any of the 9 years prior to, that could become a player option to where he could opt out if he wanted to. But right now, I don't see that happen as long as the Padres are competitive and he's happy here in San Diego. But that contract starts next year. So it starts in 2026. You got him for 9 years. And then right now, it'd be a club option. But it could deal with all the incentives at bats per year. He has to have 500 plate appearances per year each of the 9 years, and that would give him an additional $30 million. So if he got hurt one year and only had 350 at bats, that would nullify that. But he does have an opportunity to take it with all the incentives, everything included, up to $204 million. And I think that's still a very good deal. The other guy that I wanted to talk about today is Luis Arraez. And I was talking with a gentleman last night on the telephone, former major league employee. He called and just wanted to chat a little bit. And he goes, man, Arraez off to a slow start. I go, yeah, but you're going to start swinging it better. The other day, 2 hits, hit a home run. Prior to the game, he went in hitting 81, something like that. Now he's up to in the 140s. I'm not worried about Luis Arraez. He's got 2 healthy hands this year, 2 healthy thumbs. He's going to be fine. And I expect him to go on one of these tears. And think about this. And I know I've talked about it each of the last couple of podcasts. Luis Arraez went like 0 for 13 and then he got a hit. But the Padres are 7-0 without one of their offensive catalysts doing squat to this point. Now, this last homestand against Cleveland, last 3-game series, started to swing the bat much better. And I'm not worried about him. He'll still probably lead the ball club in average. Not going to, hit a ton of home runs, but he'll hit a few more home runs this year because he's got a healthy thumb. He had that surgery during the offseason, so I'm really fired up about that. Okay, as Scott Miller mentioned, the weather in Chicago is very, very iffy. And if the wind's blowing in, it'll be tough to score. If it's blowing out, it could be a slugfest. And Shota Imanaga going to be on the mound later today for the Cubbies. In fact, if you look at the line, the Padres are supposed to lose this game today. Randy Vasquez going for the Padres today. And while we're on that, I'm going to give you the lineup for the weekend. So today you got Shota Imanaga, 1-0 and a 0.82 ERA going against right-hander Randy Vasquez. Randy making his second start, was marvelous in his first start, 6 innings of no-run ball, pitching great. He did that against Atlanta. Tomorrow, Wrigley Field, 11:20. Nick Pivetta, 1-0, no ERA, 7 shutout innings last Sunday against Atlanta, going against veteran left-hander Matthew Boyd. Second start, he threw 5 shutout innings at Arizona. And then getaway day on Sunday at Wrigley Field, again, 11:20. It'll be left-hander Kyle Hart, 1-0, and a 3.60 ERA. He gave up those 2 runs in 5 innings the other night against against Cleveland, excuse me. And then he'll go against right-hander Ben Brown, 1-1 and a 5.87. And then the Padres will be in Sacramento to take on the A's on Monday, Tuesday night, both games at 7:10, Wednesday day game at 12:35, next Thursday off day, and then they open up a 3-game series a week from today against the Colorado Rockies. And then right after that, the Chicago Cubs will be coming in. Okay, I want to jump over to some college basketball, and then we're going to get to some questions before we get out of here. College basketball. Um, Several things to touch on here real quickly. UCSD's Tyler McGhie yesterday won the E-Trade three-point men's championship title. And I had a feeling he was competing against 7 other college players. And he went out there and just tore it up. In the first round, he knocked down 20 points. Second round in the semifinals, 21 in the finals. He had 20. So he won the E-Trade three-point men's championship title. And he outdistanced a young man from Missouri in that yesterday, Caleb Grill. In fact, he blew him out in the finals, 20-15. So congratulations to Tyler McGhie. Really, really nice college career, and finishes it off with a 3-point title yesterday down at the Alamo Dome. And then later today, Aniwaniwa Tait-Jones will play in the NABC Reese's Division I College All-Star Game at the Alamo Dome. That game's going to be on CBS Sports Network. I'm going to tune in and watch Aniwaniwa. Great guy. Big fan of his. One other note regarding UCSD, and not a good one for them, but Jake Hall, the prolific scorer out of Carlsbad, second leading scorer in the history of San Diego basketball, who had signed with UC San Diego, is now going to follow Eric Olin down to New Mexico. I'm not surprised by that, but I'm disappointed. I was looking forward to calling Jake's games next year, but I certainly understand going with the man that recruited him. And so wish Jake Hall the very, very best. And then the Aztecs a couple of days ago, later on Wednesday after we had our podcast, they land Louisiana Tech 6'1" point guard Sean Newman, described as a pass-first point guard last year at Louisiana Tech, averaged 9.9 points per game, 7.9 assists. And the thing that I like, and where the Aztecs got to get better. I mean, they need to be shooting free throws morning, noon, and night. He was an 83.8% free throw shooter last year. So good stuff there. And then, of course, tomorrow on Saturday, we got the Final Four. We got Florida going against Auburn. I like Bruce Pearl's team, but I'm going to go with Florida. Houston, Duke. I want Houston to win, but I have a feeling they're going to protect the brand of Duke. But I'm going to go with Houston. I'm going to go with Houston, even though I think down the stretch there should be some calls here and there. The thing about Houston's really physical. They're just ferocious on the boards. And I really like that team. They're a fun team to watch. Kelvin Sampson's had an incredible coaching career. But I'm going to go with Houston. But when I come on the air on Monday and we get ready to preview the championship game on Monday night, it won't surprise me if Duke gets some calls down the stretch and they advance to the finals. So I'm going to go with Florida, and I'm going to go with Houston. Okay? Okay, let's get to some questions. What do you got for me today, folks out there? And again, we can have a roll call today. Kind of liked roll call together today. That was fun. We were finding out where people are watching us from. Rich McGuire, with Oscar Gonzalez added to the 40-man, if Hayward struggles, would they call him up even though he's a righty bat? Yeah, but I think they're going to give they're going to give Jason Hayward every opportunity to succeed. He swung the bat pretty well the other day. And maybe, more plate appearances, he'll get it going. I don't expect him to, hit 280, but if Jason Hayward hits 250, even 240 with an on-base percentage that's decent, I see him being here for the duration. But, if he's hitting 185 at the end of May, then you got to make a decision. And Rich brings up an interesting note. Oscar Gonzalez yesterday was added to the 40-man roster because Eggy Rosario, who was out of options, had to go through waivers. And I'll be honest with you, I was surprised that nobody claimed Eggy Rosario. And I realize baseball right now, because of wiping out a bunch of minor league teams a few years ago, you can only have 175 players in the organization in the minor leagues. I realize a lot of organizations now are, right at the maximum. But I was really surprised that somebody didn't try to work a deal with AJ for Agu Rosario. I still think Rosario can play for me, but he's off the 40-man roster, and they added Oscar Gonzalez. And quite frankly, Oscar Gonzalez, I think, has earned it. With most teams, with the spring training that he had, he would have been on a major league roster. But I think we will see Oscar Gonzalez at some point because somebody's going to have a tight hamstring or have a sore shoulder, and I think we're going to see him. Hey, it's not just the 26-man roster. You got to have a bunch of guys down in the minor leagues and can come up and help you. I mean, you think the Padres staff is going to get by with 13 guys all year? They're going to need about 25 guys at the end of the day, unless everything just goes perfect. But Rich, thank you very much for the question. Good question. Steve Tays, my old buddy that we talked about the other day. The way the Padres are playing reminds me of how Japan won the World Games, making contact, stealing bases, taking extra bases, etc., sacrificing at bats for better of team. Go Padres. Steve, you're right on. And you and I grew up in the same era. We played from Little League through junior college together. You know the way the game was played. And I think, to add to what you said there, I think that's why we're seeing a high degree of the Asian players that are coming over here, and they're not struggling like they once did. They used to come over and struggle, but now they're coming over and they're being dominating players. Like the guy that's going against the Padres today, weather permitting, Shota Imanagi. He's 31 years of age. The guy knows how to pitch. Obviously, Otani is, a once in a century player. But we got a lot of Asian players. Now they're coming from Korea. Why? Because they're fundamentally sound. They know how to play the game, and they have high baseball IQ. So, Steve, you bring up an excellent point there, and hope you and the family are doing well. Bob Gallione, big attorney, folks. This guy's a big attorney. I appreciate him tuning in. I agree. This is the best stretch of Padre baseball we've ever seen. How long do you think they'll keep playing this well? Well, every day you come out, you're trying to play well every day. The ball's not going to always bounce your way. But I believe I'm one of these old school guys, Bob. If you played the game the right way a high degree of the time, the baseball gods will reward you for playing the game the right way. And again, health plays such a big part in it. I mean, you can't lose a core guy like a Tatis, who we almost want to put Fernando in a bubble to keep him healthy. And you got to keep Jackson Merrill on the field and Manny on the field. You can't lose a Xander Bogaerts, who's not hitting yet, but he'll hit better. But he's playing a pretty good shortstop right now. You can't lose any of your core guys, let alone, think about this. At some point in time, knock on wood, we're going to get Yu Darvish back in the rotation. And that's going to only make the Padres starting pitching that much better. So, very good question, man. I'll tell you what, you guys are coming out and just nailing some questions today. I'm loving it. Do we have a roll call today? Do we have a roll call? Where are you listening to the program today? We had Hawaii the other day. It was great. I'm watching you at Stanton, California. Isabel, thank you very much. I appreciate that. And we're going to get to Coach's Mailbag. We'll get to some more questions here in a few minutes, but let's get to Coach's Mailbag. Mike, I believe Jackson not only could, but would play any position his manager asked him to and be one of the best at his position, whatever the position might be. I agree 100%. I mean, the guy plays shortstop. He can certainly play second and first. I don't know about catching. I don't know if he wants to get back there catching guys throwing 95 to 100 miles an hour. But could he do it? Yeah, he probably could. But would he want to? Not sure. And I really don't want to see it. I don't want to see it. He could play third, even though third, that ball gets on you pretty quick. But, a shortstop, obviously, he can play the outfield. I mean, I don't think people make enough of what this guy did last year. I know hitting was amazing. All those numbers were like ridiculous for a kid that had only played 46 games at Double-A and never played Triple-A and got to the big leagues last year. But we need to talk about his defense. His defense has been stellar. I mean, he's supposed to play left field, and he's there 2 or 3 days to go, hey, you know what? Let's try you in center. The guy does the banana routes. He takes good routes. Didn't know any of the ballparks he was playing in. That was amazing what he was able to get done last year. It really was. Let's keep it rolling. And reminder, folks, please subscribe to the channel. I hope you enjoy the program. SD Sports Fiend. Coach, will Tatis and Merrill play their whole careers together in San Diego? I would hope so. I mean, anything can change. I mean, I would hope so, but hopefully the Seidler family hangs on to the ball club. If AJ Preller's here, he's not going to want to trade Fernando or Josh Merrill or Jackson Merrill. I would say yes at this point in time. But I will tell you this: both of them have no trade, and Fernando has a no trade up until the last few years, to where he could go to a few teams if he wanted, or he could always come in and say, "Hey, you know what? I want out of here. I've had enough of San Diego." I don't see that. I mean, I think he loves the lifestyle here. The fans are great. Well, why would you want to go play anywhere else? If you're under a long-term contract, wouldn't you want to be under a long-term contract in a town that it's really cool, the fans love you, and they come out and support you each and every night? I San Diego's a dream. We'd rather play, in Milwaukee or Pittsburgh or, of course, the big cities. I got to be honest. We were talking about Soto earlier. Soto, why would you go to the New York Mets over the New York Yankees? That makes no sense to me. For a few extra million, are you serious? Like, he hasn't already made enough of money? Why wouldn't you re-sign with the Yankees? I think the Yankees, kind of like I thought when he got traded from the Padres. I mean, addition by subtraction. I mean, he was a real pain in the rear end here in San Diego. I mean, I'm not going to get into everything I know, but man, they couldn't wait to get this guy out of town. I don't know about the front office, but I think the players had had enough of Juan Soto. That's what I think. It was all about Juan Soto. Tim Barrett, Grand Pass, Oregon. I love it. Love that. Big Joe and Temecula. Keep it coming, Joe. Thank you very much. Okay, we're going to get out of here, it looks like. I want to thank everyone for tuning in. Please subscribe. Hope you enjoyed that interview with Scott Miller. And please, we want to try to gain a big audience to talk Padre baseball. I love your questions. I mean, I try to throw out a lot of good information as much as I possibly can in basically an hour. But I look so much forward to the communication with you fans. And that's the only thing I really miss about doing a radio program day in and day out, is that interaction with you fans. And that's why we're doing this show. And that's why we've added a third day. So thank you very much. Enjoy baseball. Padres in Chicago all weekend. We got the Final Four starting tomorrow, the championship game on Monday. And of course, I'll be back in on a Monday morning at 9 a.m. Until then, have a great weekend and go Padres. Keep it rolling. Bye-bye.